It didn't happen during a press conference. It didn't happen with cameras watching. And yet, it changed everything. Because on the final day of testing in Barcelona, something shifted. Not just the lap times. Not just the run plans. But the behavior, the silence, inside the garages. What fans saw was a normal session. Cars circulating. Teams packing up. Another round of simulations and long runs. But behind the paddock doors, conversations got quieter. Screens got covered faster. And the people who usually smile for the media stopped showing up altogether. Because what happened on day 5 wasn't about performance. It was about concealment. Ferrari dropped the second fastest time of the week, but didn't run again in the final hour. McLaren ran heavy, slow, and then stopped completely, without explanation. And Red Bull? Their most telling move wasn't what they did. It was what they didn't do. They didn't chase the fastest lap. They didn't simulate race starts. They didn't even finish their original program. No issue was reported. No part failure. No weather disruption. So why did they shut the test down with time still left on the clock? Because someone saw something they didn't want to show. And someone else may have shown a little too much. What we witnessed wasn't a finale. It was a retreat. From information. From visibility. And that's always the clearest sign something's been found. Barcelona Day 5 began like any other final day of winter testing. Teams arrived early. Setups were prepared. Data plans locked in. The media presence was thinner than the first 3 days. Most cameras had already moved on. And for fans, there was little expectation of surprises. But teams know that Day 5 is when true priorities are revealed. Because it's the last chance to shape a narrative before round 1. Ferrari opened the morning quietly. Their long-run pace was consistent, their balance visibly under control. But then, with very little build-up, Leclerc ran a low-fuel lap that landed just 0.2 off the week's fastest time. No fanfare. No repeat attempt. No media debrief. He simply climbed out of the car and walked back into the garage. McLaren, meanwhile, looked conservative. After a few reliability setbacks earlier in the week, they seemed to be focused on mileage. Yet their fuel load didn't match their corner speeds. Something didn't quite add up. They were running slower than they should have, deliberately. And Red Bull? They sent Verstappen out for just a handful of short stints. Telemetry suggested the car was in stable condition. No reliability issues. No tire degradation red flags. And yet, they didn't complete the final run plan. They had more soft tires in allocation. They had more track time available. But with nearly 40 minutes left in the session, they packed up. When asked why, the team gave a standard response. Program complete. But that's the thing. Red Bull never stops early when they're chasing data. And the only time they skip a run window? Is when they've already seen what they need to see. Or when they've seen too much. And while no team confirmed changes to their car philosophy, the engineers didn't look satisfied. They looked cautious. Because while the public story was clean, what happened in private, in the data rooms and garages, suggests something entirely different. The strange thing about Day 5 wasn't what the team said. It was what they didn't say. Ferrari's run plan was unexpectedly aggressive in the morning. Their lap times were sharp, not just for the conditions, but for the car's fuel load. Telemetry from GPS overlays showed lateral loads that hinted at improved mid-corner balance. But after that one peak performance, they disappeared from the timing sheets. No follow-up laps. No race sim. Just systems checks. And when asked about it, their engineers gave generic answers. Everything ran according to plan. Except, no one runs just one lap that fast without testing repeatability. Unless they already know what they've got. Red Bull, on the other hand, had a car that looked planted. No oversteer. No corrections. But no performance runs, either. Their soft tire set, the one expected for final day low fuel laps, remained unused. Helmut Marko wasn't on site. Horner didn't speak to media. And Verstappen? He left early. McLaren's data was even more contradictory. Piastri ran a clean session, but the car showed signs of detuned mapping. Their corner speeds dropped slightly from the previous day. Not because of traffic, but because of something internal. Energy deployment looked limited. ERS release patterns were inconsistent with race mode. That only happens when you're hiding performance? Or when you've discovered something that requires a different run protocol. And that's what insiders began to whisper. The teams aren't showing what they've got. Because one of them may have found something that redefines the starting point for Bahrain. It started with a subtle change in routine. Mercedes, who had spent most of the test chasing stability, suddenly abandoned their planned rear suspension test. The garage went into lockdown, engineers crowding around screens, not the car. No mechanical failure. No visible issue. Just a shift. And once again, the explanation was program complete. But insiders know Mercedes had planned 2 final setup experiments for that afternoon. Neither happened. That wasn't coincidence. That was a reaction. To what, exactly? That's where the twist begins. Because after Ferrari's sharp run in the morning, and McLaren's odd detuned energy profile, Red Bull's response wasn't competition, it was conservation. They ran no final attack laps. No qualifying simulations. And while Verstappen spoke to no press, his mechanics were seen reviewing floor footage in near silence. The whispers inside the paddock? One theory stood out. Someone's simulation data may have been wrong. Or worse, outdated. Because if Ferrari's balance is real, if their rotation and downforce are that efficient this early, then it's not just pace. It's a concept. And if Red Bull and Mercedes both pulled the plug on their programs early, it might mean they saw that concept and couldn't answer it in time. Not on day 5. Not before Bahrain. Which leads to the quietest, most uncomfortable truth in Formula One. Sometimes, the real advantage isn't technical. It's psychological. And now, it may already be shifting. The FIA remained completely silent throughout day 5. No clarifications. No briefings. Not even a technical Q&A with journalists, something that's almost tradition during the final day. That alone was unusual. Because after a week of unexpected balance shifts and aero questions, the governing body is typically the first to offer some structure. But this year? Nothing. There were rumors of quiet meetings between team reps and FIA observers. Not official. Not recorded. Just short conversations, off to the side, where no microphones could pick them up. And it wasn't just one team. It was 4. Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, McLaren. All of them had some kind of unscheduled interaction with FIA staff in the second half of the day. Not hostile. But not routine either. And when journalists began asking about diffuser legality, specifically regarding how floor edges were being managed under high-speed yaw, the only response from the FIA was, within tolerance. That phrase matters. Because legal is definitive. But within tolerance is interpretive. And in F1, interpretation can become precedent. Or loophole. Which brings us to the part that's truly being avoided. If Ferrari has engineered a solution that manipulates floor stability without active control systems, then it's not illegal? But it might exploit an area the 2026 regulations are trying to close. Because these final days of 2024 testing aren't just about the season. They're about what's already bleeding into future car design. And that's what no one wants to talk about. Not yet. Back in Brackley, simulations have already been reloaded. Mercedes engineers are said to be reviewing wind tunnel data. Not for next week, but for what comes after April. The suspicion is that something fundamental in Ferrari's platform has pushed the rest of the grid into reaction mode. And the worst part? They don't know how far behind they are. Because Ferrari didn't show all of it. Their fastest lap was clean, yes. But the onboards show early braking into turn 10. Conservative throttle into sector 3. Which means, the true delta remains unknown. McLaren is facing a similar dilemma. Their car showed encouraging efficiency. But now, the question inside Woking is whether that efficiency is enough to match Ferrari's potential load transfer at corner entry. That's not a question you solve with setup. That's a question you solve with geometry. And if your current geometry is wrong, you redesign. That's why teams are quiet. No one wants to admit their car might be built around the wrong assumption. Especially not this late. Because with only days before Bahrain, there's no time for new parts, only new compromises. Red Bull's situation is even more delicate. They may very well have a faster car. But if they've seen something in Ferrari's data that threatens their development arc, they won't show it, not yet. Instead, they'll wait. They'll protect what they have. And watch how the field reacts. Because that's how you defend a title. Not with speed, but with control. The sun was setting in Barcelona. Teams rolled their cars into the garages. Mechanics packed crates. And just like that, winter testing was over. But no one looked relaxed. There weren't the usual smiles. No lighthearted banter with journalists. No confident quotes about feeling ready. Because deep down, the paddock knows. This test didn't answer anything. It just raised new questions. Questions that no one seems eager to discuss. Ferrari left with momentum, but without explanation. Red Bull left without showing their hand. McLaren left without using their full power unit deployment. And Mercedes left, still searching for something they haven't found. The numbers on the timesheets don't tell this story. They never do. Because what happened on day 5 isn't about stopwatch gaps. It's about posture. It's about silence. It's about the decisions being made in simulation rooms right now, Far from cameras, far from the fans. And if even one of those decisions is wrong, 2026 development will start compromised. 2024 could slip away before the lights go out in round 1. That's why no one's talking. Not because there's nothing to say, but because the first one to speak might reveal more than they intend. And so we wait. For Bahrain. For answers. For someone to blink first. But if the final day of testing showed us anything, it's that whatever they're hiding now won't stay hidden for long.